What's up, gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. In this video, we're going to cover the hot topic of if men are treated better overseas than in their current countries, such as the United States, Canada, Australia, UK, so on and so forth. In particular, we are going to be talking about black men, but the things that I'm going to share in this video are going to apply to most men in general. And this is going to be based on my near decade of experience living, traveling, and dating abroad. But before we go ahead and get into that, make sure to smash the like button. Costs you nothing, means the world to me, really helps me out with the algorithm, and I would truly appreciate if you could do that for me. Now, with all that said, let's go ahead and get into this video. And we're going to be sharing some stories and experiences, not just from my own life, but from the lives of my friends and compadres that I have met over my travels and living abroad. So, a couple disclaimers. First disclaimer is that the world is a very big place, and so there are going to be some generalizations in this video. Second disclaimer is that I will go to my grave saying this as of right now, that black men from Canada, United States, Australia, UK are treated differently than black men from Africa. Whether you like it or not, I don't care. And I'm not saying it is right. I'm just sharing with you my own observations, my own experiences, as well as the experiences and observations of the guys that I am close friends with. For example, one of my very good friends lives in Paris, France. He is a black man. He is very dark, much darker than me. And he has said, without a doubt, that ever since all the African immigrants have been flowing into Paris, it has made it harder for him because he is perceived as having that immigrant background. Now, this guy is a cold approacher, and so when he cold approaches, it's very clear that he is not an immigrant, but he said there is undoubtedly more resistance because of this. And this isn't just in Paris, there are other places around Europe that this is occurring. Now, like I said, there are generalizations. So there are other places in the world that aren't having problems with African immigrants, whereas some other places are. So keep that in mind. Now, with all that said, there are two major factors. There are going to be the factors of how the government and law enforcement views you, as well as how the population views you. So let's go ahead and start with how the government, and more specifically, law enforcement views you, because I have a few experiences with this. So I'm going to throw it back to my childhood. I grew up in an upper middle class neighborhood in West Linn, Oregon. I was one of a handful of black people in that city. So let's throw it back to around middle school time. In middle school, I would obviously be riding my bike or doing whatever around the neighborhood. And guess what? There would be cops who would come up and be like, "Do you live here? Where do you live?" But it gets even worse than that. As I grew up, obviously, I was learning to drive, specifically a manual car. And so I was driving around our neighborhood very poorly because I was learning. And the cops were called multiple times to come investigate. Same thing happened. "Oh, what are you doing in this neighborhood? Oh, you live here? Where do you live then?" And so on and so forth. And then this was all wrapped up in a very nice little bow when I finally was able to drive by myself, and I had a car, or had access to my parents' cars, I should say, and I was driving the car home to our house in our neighborhood. And of course, guess what? Cop stopped me for going, I believe, 1 mile per hour over the speed limit, and his first question was, "Whose car is this? It's a nice car." And I was like, well, it's my car. Well, technically it's my parents' car. And then that doesn't even get into the whole, for some reason, I got pulled over, or I don't even know what it's called. I got I got lit up by the police for jaywalking when everyone jaywalks in the specific area that I jaywalked in. And growing up, my parents taught me to act a certain way because officers are known for not exactly being the nicest towards people of color. So you're more likely to get into a violent altercation, or or they might have had a bad day and they might be a little itchy on the trigger finger. Now, I'm not saying these are common occurrences, and I'm not saying they are likely occurrences, but I'm saying they are known occurrences. Now, let's compare that to the only other time that I can recall I ever had to deal with police in a foreign country. That was in Thailand. And for whatever reason, they stopped me and asked me for my passport, and I didn't have it with me. There could be a number of reasons they did this. Maybe it was racism. And I just called my friend real quick and I was like, these police stopped me. They're asking for my passport. And Thailand was having some immigration problems at the time. And so I was like, I don't have it on me. Maybe I have a picture or my friend can send me a picture. So I called my friend and I told her what was going on. And she ended up talking to him on the phone. And they were like, you're free to go, but just keep your passport on you from now on. And that was my experience. And that's the only time I've had to deal with police in nearly a decade of experience. Another thing I want to point out is my dad, white guy, and his wife, who is a Barbie blonde white girl. They live in Dubai. Never have to deal with police. As soon as they got back to the United States, within 24 hours, they were pulled over. So this highlights one other thing that applies to all men, not just men of color. The fact that the United States is a borderline police state. Police are in speed traps, just waiting for you to speed and be like, ha, gotcha, here's your ticket, buddy. Or they're waiting for you to roll a red light, roll a stop sign, or something ridiculous like that. They're trying to nickel and dime you at every corner. And this doesn't happen in other places. In fact, I was in Italy, and I probably shouldn't tell this story, but I was driving very, very fast. I rented a pretty nice car, and I was flying down the road. I was kind of racing another car, to be completely honest and transparent. I doubt the Italian government is going to retroactively come after me. And we were just bombing away. And we just flew right past this cop in his like little cop car. And he was staring at us because you can like see them. And, you know, me being from the United States, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to jail in Italy. And the guy just stayed parked. And I was like, yeah, that's a cop that isn't just like on his radar gun waiting. But even in all the other places I've gone, no interactions with police in nearly a decade. Whereas in the first 18 years of my life, I didn't do anything super stupid or anything like that, but I had a ton of police interactions. So that's the first way that all men are going to benefit from going abroad. There's going to be less interactions with police, from minor infractions to possibly major infractions. And if you're a person of color, well, then you really don't have to worry about that whole police brutality thing. And I'm not saying it is a common occurrence, but I'm saying that if you are a person of color, then your parents or someone has probably spoken to you about how you should be when police are interacting with you, because your senses should be greatly heightened. I have many stories about this because I have a ton of white friends, and when they engage with police, they just mouth off to them, and I'm like, oh my God, if I did that, I would probably be George Floyded or something like that. And I mean, you probably can't even say that on YouTube, so whatever. Might have to edit that bit out. That is one thing. Now, the other end of the spectrum is how locals view you. And this is where it gets really deep into generalizations, because the world is a massive place. And I'm not going to go through every single country and all the 60 different countries I've been in and analyze if they're racist or not. And I've talked about it in other videos that other places are a little bit more racist in general than some other places. However, a place like Japan, it's like sneaky racism. They aren't gonna really threaten you, they're not gonna harm you, they're just gonna give you weird looks and they might not let you into a place. Whereas in the United States, people are gonna scream like the N-word at you, they might make threats, or God forbid, they might take it to the highest level, which we have seen on numerous occasions. But for the most part, when you are living and traveling abroad, you're really going to interact with maybe 3 types of people. One type don't really care about your skin color. Second type, they care and they don't want to be around you. Third type is they care and they love you, they like you, and they're interested. And for the most part, the second type, who don't want to be around you, don't want to interact with you, and are objectively racist, for the most part, they're just going to avoid you. They're not going to interact with you. They're not going to sit there screaming the N-word at you or anything like that. Well, at least from my knowledge, I don't speak the language of all 60 plus countries I've been to. So, as to my knowledge, that has legitimately only happened to me once, and it was by like a 10-year-old kid in Slovenia. And funny enough, he was at like I don't know what it's called, but it's like a boys and girls club for youth who are not behaving very well. So obviously that wasn't really hard to put 2 and 2 together for that one. And another thing I'll say is that if you are a traditional masculine man, you're probably going to be received better in most of these other countries than in a place like the United States, where there is kind of a war on masculinity and a war on gender and all that good stuff that I am not getting into in this video. I mean, that's just opening a whole can of worms. Now, that's not to say you should be like this super macho alpha, super loud guy, causing a ruckus, because that's disrespectful. And that will not go over well in places like Thailand or Asia in general. But for my money, what I would say is that I have undoubtedly been treated better by the women, the locals, and the authorities in foreign countries than I have been treated by those same groups in the places that I lived in the United States of America. Now, I never lived in Canada, Australia, UK, so I can't speak to those places. But I also do want to say that just because you are treated better in these places doesn't mean you're going to be treated like royalty. I'm just saying, as Nomad Capitalist would say, I went where I was treated best. I am not treated best in the United States, who is constantly policing all of their citizens and restricting your freedom and trying to nickel and dime you and be like, gotcha. And with the cancel culture and women with the war on masculinity, looking for feminized, beta-ized men, just wasn't for me. Whereas when I went to other places, how I acted, my mannerisms, while respectful, I do find myself to be somewhat of a leader. And women especially appreciated that. And the authorities treated me with respect. I treated them with respect, never had any issues. And most importantly, my freedoms aren't really encroached on. Now, with that said, I'm going to wrap up this video. It's gotten quite long. If you could do me a favor, I have a couple questions for you. How does this video look? It's a different camera. Obviously, when I see it back, I might be able to tell, but I would love to have your opinion. And second of all, if you have any experience living, traveling, and dating abroad, and if you've noticed how you're treated in the United States or wherever you come from compared to overseas, go ahead and share that down below so we can help as many men as possible. Now that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time. And as always, peace, much love.